Most parents think they have a discipline problem or a child who just doesn't listen. But what if the real issue is nervous system dysregulation? In this episode, I am joined by Jaspreet Chopra Lewis, and together we unpack why emotional invalidation lives in the body, not just the mind, the parenting pendulum that makes us swing between control and guilt, as well as the surprising reason that you might feel defensive, drained, or desperate even when nothing big is happening. You'll learn how to recognize the deeper signals between everyday struggles and how to respond, not react. Welcome back to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. This month, we've been exploring how healing the past helps us parent better. And so today, joined by the thoughtful and wise Jaspreet Chopra Lewis, a parent coach and a nervous system specialist who brings over decades of experience in education as well as journaling, coaching, and trauma work, we are going to be continuing this conversation. Jaspreet is a trauma-informed parent coach and a Polyvagal Informed music interventionist. In her words, she strongly believes that focusing on behavior modification will never help you have a deeply connected relationship with your child. Real change happens when parents do the work, when they heal from their own childhood wounds, and when they see their child's experiences from a fresh perspective, and not from a lens that is colored by conventional thoughts, their own experiences in childhood, as well as current stresses. You can find out more about Jaspreet in her bio, which is included in the show notes in the description below. There, you will also find a resource that she's sharing, which you will hear about during the episode. And if this is your kind of thing, if you're listening in and you're nodding along, I invite you to join the Sunday Reconnect, my free weekly email ritual. Each week, I send an honest insight, one powerful exclusive tool, and one 3-minute reset to help you feel closer to yourself and to others. Whether you're parenting in chaos, whether you're surviving sleep regressions, or trying to reconnect with your partner, these tools are designed to support the parts of you that get left behind in modern parenthood. You can sign up anytime at markelikaplani.com/newsletter, and when you do, you'll get a timeless welcome gift, a tool to help you pause and rewire. So without further ado, let's get into this conversation about nervous system healing, inner child compassion, and the parenting shifts that truly change everything. Hi there. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markela Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children, so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, Jaspreet.
Hi, Markela.
It's very nice to have you here. Thank you for coming on to the podcast.
My pleasure.
Can you tell us a little bit about you?
I am working as a parent coach and also as a person who helps people in nervous system regulation. So this is something that I've been doing for the past few years. I have an experience of about 24, 25 years in various fields, but this is something that has been my calling. And I'm glad that I am doing the work that I'm doing. So primarily my work involves working with parents, children, and also working for creating safe spaces for children and women.
Very nice. So this month, I've been talking about healing the past to parent better, and that is what you are here to talk to us about. Yeah. And so I'm wondering, since you're saying that this is something that you've been doing more recently, that you were in another path before, can you tell us a little bit about your journey? And you said, this is my calling, which is so beautiful to hear. To tell us how you realized this calling and how you came to do what it is that you're doing, what the passion is behind it.
Absolutely. And I would love to talk about that. And if I go overboard on time, please let me know. So my journey began, I think, around 2020. There's a moment that you feel that you are not where you want to be. And nothing seems to be working the way you want it to be working like. So I was in a space. And in fact, I still remember some words from one of my earliest mentors under whom I studied life coaching. I still remember when he said that change does not happen unless you reach the pit of despair. And that's where I was in that moment. And that pushed me to change the things that I could. And that was me. Because come what may, I could not change the external things and incidents that were happening around me. And something needed to shift if I wanted to change the way I was living my life. So I think that was the first push that I ever received. And then I'm glad that I went onto that path because there's so much new learning that happened. And yeah, so the shift in my life began with me learning about life, trying to learn life coaching. And then shifts began to happen. And then I realized that, especially when it comes to parenting, there was one moment I still remember that I sat down, I thought that I'm going to just give up on trying to do anything for my child for that matter, because there was such a huge disconnect that had happened. And my child was young at that point of time. So there was a huge disconnect and I was about to give up. And a voice spoke in my heart that, how can you do that? Because if you ever give up, what's going to happen to your child if your child needs any help? And that was the moment that pushed me towards trying to learn about how I can be a better parent. And that also pushed me into a journey of healing. And again, so many people have been instrumental in that. I cannot take one name. But yes, that's been a great push in my life that pushed me to a process of healing, because I could not be the parent I wanted to be without doing my own work, because my patterns kept cropping up again and again and stopped me from becoming the person that I wanted for my child. So yeah, that's something that pushed me. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Parenting provides such an opportunity for us to grow if we see it that way. If we look through the hardships that parenting presents and start to see ourselves reflected in our children, to recognize what it is that we are lacking. Or a lot of times I find parents, and I find myself doing the same thing, to see that the way that I treat my child is not the way that I treated myself. And through trying to be a gentler parent, a more present parent, a more compassionate parent, how we can take a little bit of that and start giving it to ourselves and our inner child. And those parents who don't see an inner child that starts kicking back and rebelling, and they start to have this internal struggle. And usually that's how they end up seeking some help to be able to bring that internal fight that's happening to some kind of peace. So in your experience, what are the most common intergenerational patterns that parents unknowingly carry into parenting? Because you talked about your patterns.
Yeah. I think there are quite a few, McKenna, if we're going to be honest, and each one of them is very important. But at the top of my head, I can speak about a few. The number one is invalidation. The invalidation is something which seems so inconsequential. It doesn't seem so big, but it is huge. And in fact, as adults, we are carrying, or people who've not healed themselves are still carrying. And this is what we're passing on to our children as well. The invalidation puts the children in so much of self-doubt, and self-doubt in not just in the context of what they can do, but also about their own worthiness. So this invalidation is something one of the most important things I think that parents need to think about.
How do parents invalidate? In your experience, how is it that parents invalidate their children? Can you give us a few examples?
Yeah, invalidation could be their feelings. Very small example is if my child comes to me and tells me that they're feeling hurt about something, or they felt some particular emotion. It could be fear. And we tell them that, no, there's nothing to fear. And, no, this is not fear. This is something else. Or maybe you're not feeling confident. Or we intellectualize it so much, because this is another thing. We intellectualize everything so much that we forget about the foundational aspect of that relationship, which is the emotion of that person. So that is something which is disregarded in that moment. And we try to intellectualize each and everything. So this is a very common example, I think. And as a child, you must have also gone through something like that. Maybe not intentional from your parents' side, unintentionally, parents end up doing that because this is what generations and generations have received from their parents. So invalidating an emotion or invalidating a thought. So I think this is something which is the basics that we can think about.
Right. And I'm also thinking about the savior syndrome that we have as parents. I don't know if all generations had it, but our generation definitely does. So I want to save you from your feelings. And I think this is something that has been going on for ages and ages, that we are not comfortable with emotions. And that's why we intellectualize, like you very eloquently said. And then we also get into savior mode. Don't feel that way. No, it's not that bad. And so that's invalidation. But in that moment, we're feeling like we are taking away that bad emotion from our child. We're telling them, no, there's nothing to fear. That's not a reason to be sad about. We give them then reasons, we intellectualize, and we try to save them from that feeling that obviously is a feeling that we don't know how to regulate and handle.
Absolutely. Because invalidation, again, is not something that we as adults or adults do it intentionally. It's just that that's our way of saving ourselves because we are so uncomfortable in that feeling. And the moment it comes in front of our face, it's difficult for us to deal with it. And the only way is to just push it under the rug. And that's what invalidation is, because we are uncomfortable with that particular feeling or with that emotion. We do not know how to handle it. It is our fear cropping up. That is the reason when we talk about parenting, is the number one thing is that you deal with your own stuff. Yes. Because let's suppose I tell somebody strategies to deal with their child. There are certain strategies. I'm using those strategies, but the fact is I will not be able to use them appropriately. The reason is because my own healing is due. My own fears, my own issues are still there in the background. They're playing in the background. They're running in the background. And it's stopping us from being present with our child in that moment as the person whom they need. So when I think we will be talking about the nervous system. So I will be able to explain this in a more elaborate way, why that nervous system works or why the trauma healing is necessary for us to be present with our child as a person whom our child needs. Yeah, so I think all these every way, just strategies does not help, because in the background, there's a background score which is running all through. We are using those strategies as a robot, and it is never going to have that impact because our body language, our facial features and our expressions, our tone is never going to match the words that we are speaking to them.
And even if they do, because you're talking about the nervous system, and I want to get to that as quickly as possible. I'm very interested in talking about that. I'm thinking that you can only play a role so much, and you can only play it when you are regulated. What happens when I'm stressed from work? What happens if I've had a fight with my husband and I'm not feeling emotionally well? Can I really use these strategies that are so opposed to my natural program that's running in the background? And the answer is no. So even if I'm the best actress in the world and I can implement your strategies as well as possible, or so I believe, then what happens when I am dysregulated? It's so difficult to be playing an alter ego role when I am dysregulated. And so, of course, I'm going to fall back to practices that are not helpful. And then on top of that, I'm going to amass guilt and shame for not being able to follow what I know is quote unquote right. And so then it becomes even worse, right? Before we get to the nervous system, though, you said one thing is invalidation. So one of the most common things is invalidation. What are other common things that you see as intergenerational patterns that trouble our parenting?
The control, seeking that control, and even the savior mode that we spoke about, that's about having the control. We want to have that control, and in every which way, whether it is by showing our authority or by just running to their rescue, doing everything for them, because it's a pendulating action. We do not want to parent the way we were parented. And it's not something that we intentionally think about. It's something, the moment our child is born, I'm sure the first loving moment, you must be thinking about parenting. You must have thought, I'm going to love you. And I'm going to make sure that I do not make the same mistakes that my parents made. So in that loving moment, this is what we are saying to our child. But as the life progresses, we realize that it's not possible. Number one, because the intention is that I'm not going to do this. The intention is not that I am going to do this. So there's a huge difference between the two. There's a negative reinforcement or negative motivation that we're going to have in front of us. And we don't have an intention that this is the positive intention where I want to go. This is one thing which can be a roadblock. So this pendulating between being authoritarian and being permissive. So we do not know where to go. So there's no middle ground for us. So this is another pattern that we see. And this is also something which is generational. We do not know where to go. We either are completely controlling or completely giving. So this is another pattern that I do see, and I'm no different. I've seen it in myself also. So most of the parents that I've met have been pendulating like this. So I think this is another intergenerational pattern that we see happening. And push through. There's another one. Fake it till you make it. This is the first suggestions that I've heard parents giving.
Because that's a suggestion that they give to themselves as well, right? Do you know how often I hear mothers saying, push through? So they are in a newborn stage, they are worn out, they don't have the support that they're looking for. We're trying to find practical ways for them to be supported. And their answer is others are able to do it, which is imaginary, right? The ideal self. Others are able to do it, then I should be able to do it. And it's okay, I'll just push through. It will get better. I'll push through. And there's no compassion in that. It's very harsh. And you said something before. You said it's not possible to be that ideal parent that we promised our baby and ourselves. I find that a lot of parents don't say it's not possible because that would have some compassion in it, because it makes it a little bit more accepting of the fact that maybe it is impossible and it's not in my control. What they say is, I cannot do it. I am the problem. I should be able to be that idealized version of parent that I imagined. And so that becomes very problematic because the way that we treat ourselves is the way that we will treat our children as much as we try to override the system. And that pendulum, I love what you said about the pendulum. I see it happening all the time because if we are very strict with ourselves, if we're very harsh, so we're authoritarian with ourselves, our inner parent is authoritarian with our inner child, then when I want to be different, I have to go to the other extreme to cancel out this authoritarian part of me. And so I can't go in the middle. I want to, but I will inevitably become permissive. And so these are very nice points that you're bringing forward. And I would like, since you started introducing the topic, to go into the nervous system and what's happening at that level for me when I am in that pendulum. When I want to be compassionate with my child, but I end up either being too permissive or shouting and not being the way that I want to show up.
See, before we begin, we need to understand how our nervous system works. Because again, we have been trained to be the best in whatever we do. There's no stopping, and it's never enough. I wonder if anybody would have ever heard that you've done enough. It's nothing against parents or any parents of any generation for that matter. It's nothing against anyone, my parents or their parents. I wonder if anybody ever heard this word. So our autonomic nervous system, we all have that. Not just humans, even if it's an animal, we all have our autonomic nervous system. And what is the major work of autonomic nervous system? The main purpose of autonomic nervous system is to gauge our environment, external and internal, to see whether we are safe or not. We are trying to look for signals of safety all the time. When we look at it just like a ladder, there are three basic foundational states. The topmost state is the state where we call the state of safety. In a very simple language, okay, that's the topmost. Then the second state we call that is the fight or flight. And the third state is called the shutdown state. So there are three foundational states which are there. Now, based on the cues that we receive from our external environment and the internal environment, we keep moving between these states all the time. Okay, whether we are in a state of, whether we feel we are in a state of safety, or we go into a fight or flight, or we go into a shutdown. When we feel everything is good, everything is comfortable, we are in the topmost state. When we sense any danger, it could be any, it doesn't have to be a physical threat. Any sense of threat that we receive, we go into a fight or flight. So when I'm in danger, I'm either going to fight my enemy or I'm going to run away. Very simple. The third state that we come down to, which is called the shutdown state, which means I've fought my fight and now there's no other way. So the best way to protect myself is to go into shutdown. There are other blended states as well, but we're not going to talk about that today. A healthy nervous system will allow you to move between these states. So sometimes you will be agitated, you will be in a flight mode, sometimes you'll be in a fight mode or a shutdown mode or in a safe mode. Problem arises when we are stuck in those states. So when a person is unable to, when the person is chronically in a fight or flight state or in a shutdown state, and how we can recognize that, we'll talk about that. When people are stuck in states, or we call that it's probably in a loop, they are stuck in loops, that is when the problem arises. So if I'm chronically in a fight or flight mode, I will sense danger everywhere. A raised voice, my child not listening to me calling again and again, the child not responding, or there's a mess in the room. I've asked my child to do a particular thing the child has not done. And why is it a threat? Because there are patterns that have been formed over a period of time. And that is true since our childhood till our adulthood. There are certain patterns have been formed. There's certain programming that has been done, which means if my child is not listening to me, my child is challenging my authority. We are not trying to understand what could be the reasons. So this is not a compassionate way of understanding that particular context. What we're going into is because we're going into a defense mode. I'm trying to protect myself. So I feel that I'm being challenged in that moment. I go into a fight or flight. This is not something that the child is rebelling. This is a very simple daily occurrence in our life that can trigger us. It's not even something huge. I can get triggered by a spill on my precious rug. Even that can trigger me.
So what could the programming be for the person that is very upset about the spill on the rug?
Why?
Because you gave a potential for why somebody would be very upset if the child is not listening, which I loved because a lot of children won't listen and we have to repeat ourselves a million times. And there are a lot of parents, and I found myself getting triggered by that, and I had to find out what my own programming was, why the not listening was becoming personal and felt like it was a challenge, like you said very beautifully. So how about the spill on the rug? What could a potential, because for everybody it could be different things.
Absolutely. And this is me too. So a spill on the rug, we could go back to our childhood, how a mistake was taken care of in the moment, how the loss of materialistic things was made sense of is also very important. Again, the topics that we discuss is not to demean our parents or to disrespect our parents or not to accept what they have done for us, but it is to make sense of our own traumas and our own patterns and our own hurts to be able to let go of them. We cannot heal our parents unless they think of healing themselves. What we can do is we are a link, and it is our responsibility that, what we do with that.
That is a great tool because, yes, the experience for everybody will be different and the answer that we get to will be different, but it is a nice tool, that question to ask ourselves, how was it for me when I was a child? And I also really so I want to point it out so that everybody is making sure to pay attention to what you just said and what you just did right now. You took away the shame of the inner child about looking into these issues about our parents, because a lot of times what we run into as we do this work is that the inner child gets activated, and what it wants to do is to defend the parents because it wants to maintain the connection. The inner child is still in that state and it's afraid of losing the connection. It's afraid of being not loyal to the parents. And it's really important that we appease our inner child, that we are not disrespecting our parents by looking at potential tiny traumas or potential wounds that have been formed in our childhood. They didn't mean intentionally to hurt us. And the tough part is, if we've had good parents, if there isn't some kind of very visible kind of abuse that we went through, then it becomes much more difficult for us to try to process these wounds because we feel shame that these are good parents and they loved me. I shouldn't be blaming them. And this is not about blame. So it's very important that you say this. We are not here to blame our parents, and our inner child needs to be appeased. We're not being disloyal. We can look at what it is that we would have wanted. We can look at what needs maybe went unmet, without blaming and without suggesting that they were bad parents or they didn't love us. And doing so lowers the defenses so that we can actually start to do this work, because otherwise, if the defenses go up, we won't be able to look at anything.
Absolutely, Mark. And thank you for reiterating that, because this is important. And I really wanted to mention something. We are talking about taking away the blame, taking away the shame, because that needs to be taken away, because we are humans. We are not supposed to consider ourselves as gods. Parents are not gods, and nobody is, neither are children. So it has to be taken away. And one of the prominent figures I heard, because I get inspired by so many people that I cannot even mention in probably an hour's time. And this person also has inspired me for a lot of things, but it was saddening to see that talking about that it is shameful to be stuck in your defensive state. That's a kind of statement that was passed on. How can we expect people to change when we are shaming them to change themselves, to not shame their kids? How can we shame people to make those changes? We're teaching them that you should not be shaming your child. You should not be labeling them. You should not be blaming them. And I'm pushing you by blaming you to do the same thing, which is a little odd, because there's a little more compassion which is needed in this world. It is needed. And one person in a family doing the work, I know, and because I've experienced that, one person doing the work in one family is more than enough, because you will end up changing so many lives around you. And that's a fact. So many people get defensive because everything was fine, because they were not beaten up, they were not abused, they were provided with every damn thing in this world. But the hurt is still there. That child clinging onto their parents for that belongingness, that my parent loved me, because the moment I let go of that, I am just a nobody. If my parent did not love me, if I accept that, which is not true, our parents loved us. The moment I accept that I was hurt by my parent.
What does that say about me? If my own parents didn't love me,
I was not worthy of that love. And this is a very basic trauma that I have not seen a person who's not gone through this. That feeling of unworthiness, that feeling of not being enough. And it keeps cropping up every other day. And a few days back with my husband, it cropped up. And unintentionally, a framework that I've learned over a period of time now, this comes very naturally to me. And I did not even realize that I used that framework, because I did not feel that I was cared for or I was important enough. And I went on to a silent mode for a few hours. And then I started working out in my mind, could there be another aspect to it? Maybe he was not able to provide that love and care to me in that moment. That is also a possibility, not because I'm not worthy of love. It's because he was not in that moment capable of doing that. So it changed the entire thing. And there was peace inside the home once again.
Can you share with us this framework that you're using? Because it sounds like what you did was you took away the personalization from it, the self-blame, that if he didn't give me the attention or the care, the support, the love that I wanted in that moment, in the way that I wanted, then that means I am unworthy, I am unlovable, or whatever it is that we tell ourselves. And you were able to shift the perspective and say, but what if he wasn't in that frame of mind at that moment? What if it was something that he couldn't provide? And isn't that okay? And with the compassion that you were able to show him, then it was very easily dissolved, your anger or your personal hurt. So what's that framework that you are discussing?
So this is a framework that Dr. Gabor uses, and this is about just reframing the entire incident. The first thing is accepting that what is happening in that moment is a thought. It is not truth. It's a possibility that the truth and the thought are same, but it is not necessary. So we're not going to invalidate ourselves that, no, my thought is wrong. No, my thought is not wrong, but it is a possibility that it is different from the truth. So accepting that is something which is very important. Then we try to see, where exactly is this coming from? What am I feeling in that moment? What is that feeling that is coming because of that thought? Then we'll be able to see that, because, nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. Those kind of things will start cropping up. These are thoughts, but there's a feeling behind that, because I have a need, I have a feeling. So getting down to the bottom of it and trying to understand what exactly is happening with me in this moment. Why am I feeling like that?
Yeah, CBT calls those the core beliefs, and it's really important to get to those. Yes.
Absolutely. And everybody should have the core beliefs and the core needs as their screensaver or probably as a poster in their homes, because this is not a language that has been taught to us. This is a language that we're learning now. We have to first learn the language of our needs, the language of our feelings, to teach that to our children. So separating that, the thought that arises and what exactly is the feeling is first thing for you to understand. And then to go back into your past and see, when was it that I felt the same in my childhood? Look at that. Was there any moment in your childhood when you felt exactly like this or something similar to this? And then we'll realize that this is not a new feeling. This is a feeling that goes way back. This thought served us at one point of time because it was the best way for us to protect ourselves.
It's very important that you mentioned this, because a lot of times the things that we do, we turn around and guilt trip ourselves and shame ourselves that why am I doing this? It's so obviously wrong. Again, invalidating and intellectualizing with ourselves that I shouldn't be doing that. And we don't take the time to understand where it's coming from. We don't take the compassion that it needs. We think we need to just get rid of it. But you can't get rid of it if you don't find out where it came from and you don't understand how it was protective in the past and give it the recognition that it needs. So it's kind of like, if somebody is trying to tell you something and you keep on shrugging them off, they will keep on trying to tell you. They will come with more intensity and they will push and they will shout. And so that's what we constantly try to do, is to push away the things that we consider negative, the things that we consider bad, which a lot of times, if not always, there's no such thing as negative and bad. It was there for a reason. If it's still there, it believes that there is a reason. It's based in fear and it's based in protective mechanisms. So it's really important to take the time to realize where it was born and what its purpose was.
And in fact, we will be talking about where we want to go, because that is also very important, the intention setting. You cannot give something you do not have for your own self. So find that compassion for yourself, that I needed this thought in my childhood, but today it is not helping me. And then we try to break that pattern by doing anything. So if I'm sitting with you and now it's started to spiral or that thought is coming now, in the same moment, while attributing that to the correct space, which is my childhood, where I needed that particular thought, now I also break that pattern by maybe just if you are in your home, just walking to your kitchen, maybe making something, a tea for yourself, or going for a walk, just taking a sip of water or cuddling with your dog, anything.
Anything that doesn't allow us to spiral, basically.
We change our physiology. I just break the pattern, even for 5 minutes, even for 1 minute. We do this every time. And after that, we return, we reassess that, and we see that this particular thought, which we have attributed to something which helped in our childhood, that is not helping me right now. Now, what do I need? What do I want? And then having an intention, which is the most important thing. When I'm talking about parenting my child, what is my intention with my child? If I have that intention in place, then I will know in this moment whether what I'm doing right now, the thought process that I have right now, is it taking me closer to my goal or not? And if this is not taking me closer to my goal or towards my intention in my parenting, what is going to? That's how we change the lane.
So that's the intention that you were discussing before.
Yeah, because that gives us a reference point. When I have that reference point, my goal there, I know which path I'm walking. I might lose track somewhere, but I still know where I need to go. If it is not helping you, then please change the track, which is the last step. You shift gears and you move to a path which is going to take you there.
Yes, so that is the most important part in the framework. I was wondering as you were talking, where do we struggle? And the answer I'm getting to is that we skip steps. So we get to the intention setting and trying to switch gears way before we do what you said, that we accept that our thoughts are just thoughts, that they're not necessarily facts, that we find the source and tend to our feelings, that we look back to our childhood compassionately and try to understand, how did this serve me? And look at that part that now seems to be getting in the way of me being the parent that I want to be, to look at it with compassion and ask it what it needs, not bid it farewell and tell it to go away and shut the door in its face, because that is what happens when we skip those 4 steps and we get directly to, my intention is to be this and this kind of parent, and I'm switching gears. And we keep on finding ourselves going back to the lane that we used to
Yeah.
be. And then
Yeah.
we blame ourselves for not keeping to our intention.
Absolutely. Skipping steps that you're talking about, this is again the invalidation or not acknowledging our own experience. We're just trying to get rid of it. The compassion is missing for our own self. If you've heard of Dr. Stephen Porges' Safe and Sound protocol, I'm a provider for that too, for nervous system regulation. So I know people are stuck in those loops, stuck in defensiveness, and it's so difficult for them to come out. I'm never going to say that this is not possible. It is absolutely possible for them to be unstuck. But the first step itself is something they struggle to take.
Which is?
Acceptance that I need help.
Yes.
Our relationship with our children is no different from our relationship with anybody else. But here, we have more responsibility because we are the adults. A child is not capable of regulating themselves until and unless we teach them how to self-regulate. And we cannot teach them to self-regulate till we know how to self-regulate. As an adult, what our responsibility is that we are able to self-regulate, then co-regulate with our children for them to be able to self-regulate later on. It's a chain. Mostly our triggers are due to how our nervous system is perceiving our surroundings and our inside.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Safe and Sound protocol? And is there anything that parents can do if they're listening that they can take from this protocol and do themselves? Any strategies that we can pull from that for parents to use?
Safe and Sound protocol is a tool. It's actually a listening therapy, which is a 5 hour of listening to music, specifically created for nervous system regulation. And this involves them to listen to it, to create new pathways, which are going to be healthier. So it helps you to let go of your patterns. It helps you to let go of you staying in fight or flight or shut down. The idea of Safe and Sound protocol is to bring people into the socially engaged nervous system state, which is the safe state. Safe state is a place where learning, enjoyment, fun happens, where we are able to co-regulate with each other. That is a state of all the healthy stuff that is happening.
So you said there are some symptoms that I can look out for to know if I am dysregulated, because somebody may be feeling like, okay, sometimes I yell, am I really dysregulated? Is my nervous system mostly in a loop or in fight or flight most of the time? How do I know? Can you give us clear indications that can let us understand that we could be needing help with our nervous system?
I will give you some physiological symptoms and also thoughts, because it's not necessary that everybody is connected to their body in a way that can recognize those symptoms. So physiological symptoms could be discomfort. Number one, you always feel that you are either running on empty or your mind is constantly running. That is one state that you can realize that you are constantly living in a fight or flight. Then a racing heart. Chronic pain is another one. You have, quite a lot of pain in your shoulders constantly. That's a state of fight or flight that you're living in. So these are some physiological symptoms. The other symptoms could be thoughts. I am constantly feeling that somebody's out to get me, or somebody is trying to put me down. I am constantly feeling disrespected. If this is your way of life, if this is your constant feeling throughout the day, or 50% or 60% of the time, I won't say 100%, but if it is majority of your thought process is this particular way, then you are living in fight and flight. But there is a shutdown also. Shutdown is you do not have enough energy. That is a loop. That is a fight or flight and your shutdown loop that is happening. Procrastinating, which means that you have to do something about it, and then you do not have the energy or the mental strength or any kind of strength to do anything about it. So you keep running in that loop of procrastination. So these are few examples that I can give you, but that's coming top of my head.
These are really good. Yes. And it's really important to keep them in mind and to realize that this is happening, to watch out for these things. I was listening to what you were saying, and I was thinking of one of the thoughts that come up a lot in my sessions with parents is nobody understands me, and also nobody cares so that they can support me. I ask for support. It doesn't happen. Then I wait for somebody to understand that I need it. And so it's really important to start to challenge that a little bit, to recognize where it's coming from and to
Yeah.
understand that I could be dysregulated. And while it can be valid that I feel this way, it can also be that I am dysregulated. Because sometimes some people will become very defensive when it's suggested that you might be in fight or flight. It might be your nervous system dysregulated. They'll tell you, no, it's a fact. I don't get enough support. And it's not to invalidate. Yes, possibly you're not getting a lot of support.
Absolutely.
But the thought that keeps you in a loop, that keeps you in fight or flight, is not helping.
Yeah.
And sometimes we block support as well because we need to fulfill that thought, that core belief that we have that nobody cares about me.
Yeah.
And so it gets a little bit tricky, and that is where we need some professional help. So if I find myself being stuck in that framework, I believe that we don't always need professional help. And that's why on my podcast, I always ask experts the way that I've asked you to give some actionable steps, because
Yeah.
there are those who will be very inspired. They'll try your framework and they'll get somewhere. But a lot of
Yes.
times our trauma and our wounds and our own defenses, the other parts that are not in acceptance yet and they're not ready, they will need some extra hand-holding in order to get to where we're telling them to go, where we're inviting them to go.
Absolutely.
And so before we close this conversation, I think a nice ending would be if you would address the parents who think that they've already messed up a lot, who are afraid as they're listening to this, that they are in constant fight or flight or freeze response. What is it that you would tell them in order for them to feel appeased? Is there a way for them to break these patterns and repair what they believe has been done so far?
Absolutely, Markella. And this is the most wonderful part of this work or any work. It's not about you going to a particular coach or a therapist or you going ahead with a particular modality. Any work that you're doing on yourself, it's about that. Now, it's never too late. Every relationship can be mended when you have that desire to mend it, whether it is with your own self or with your child or your husband or anybody. So if our listeners have young children, I would urge them to start the work as early as possible. So they do not have to do a lot of work when the children are grown up. But if your children are grown up, whether they are 10 plus or they are 15 plus or 18 plus or 30 plus, it does not matter. Every moment is the right time to do the work. It begins with you. The number one thing is realization that I want to change things from the way they are and come out of the shame, come out of the blame, because it is not to justify, but it's important for us to understand that we are who we are because of our experiences. But are we happy about it or not is a choice that we need to make. And if you're not happy about it, then what can we do to change that?
We have associated accountability with blame. And I like the way that you're saying it as a nice reminder, because I always make sure to note that in the podcast that I do as well, that accountability is also power. So when I take accountability for being part of the link, I can take it as, oh my God, I did the same things and the same patterns and I have effed up my child. Or I can turn around and say, hey, I've got the power to repair here. If I am accountable, if I have responsibility, then that means I have power. And I can use that power to repair, to start breaking the pattern and do the best that I can.
Beautiful. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's one last thought that you would like to leave us with before we bid farewell?
Just do the work. I think there's a huge responsibility we have for our children. And we have few more years, how many, 20, 30? But there will be a moment when they will be on their own. Prepare them for that and prepare them for the world by holding their hand while preparing them for those hardships that they will be seeing. So that's something that motivates me. And I'm going to leave you with that because it's important that we prepare our children for the world that we're going to be leaving them in. And as I said, one person doing the work can impact so many people. So do the work, impact more lives around you and other children as well. So I think, yeah, that's it.
Yes, when you said that before, our conversation shifted to something else. I wanted to say that felt like a warm hug. It's beautiful because just before this podcast interview, I was in a session with someone who had experienced a traumatic event very recently. And she was saying, why am I talking about this in therapy when the person who did this to me is the one who has the problem? And this is a valid question. And this is a lot of times the question that we get in therapy, that why should I be dealing with this when those who did this to me are the ones that are at fault? They're the ones that have a problem. And while that could be very valid, in her case, it is 100%. It was abuse that she experienced. While that's valid, the answer is you are here because you are breaking the chain, because you are responsible, because you decided that I have this power to be the change. And so instead of feeling like a victim and that it's unfair that I am doing the work when others are in need of changing, we can see that if I do the work, I could be the change and it can impact. It's very beautiful to know. And also to have that focus, because I'm thinking of several cases where it feels like there's so much to do. So they start to think about all these things that we discussed today, and they think, and I need to fix this, I need to fix that, I need to take care of my relationship with my parents, and then I also need to repair my relationship with my children, I also need to repair with myself, and it starts to get overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the important thing is this, and what I remind them, and basically that is what you said, is focus on yourself. Focus on your nervous system, focus on your childhood, focus on that, and then everything else starts falling into place.
And I can vouch for that, because once you work on your own trauma healing, again, trauma is not something that we're talking about that's something huge in the eyes of the world must have happened. We're talking about small hurts that have impacted you throughout your life. That's a trauma that we're talking about. If there's any hurt that you're living with, it is important for you to do the work, because once you do the work, all those strategies that you've learned from books will not matter. Because intuitively, you will be able to parent and be in relationships that, the way you were supposed to be as a human, the person that God created. So don't go for strategies. You want to learn, please do. It's always good to learn new things. And you never know what comes in handy at what point of time. But that will only serve as an additional tool. Don't rely on that, because that will not mend any relationship at all.
Thank you. That's a beautiful thought to leave our audience with. I hope that they felt as warm and comfortable in this conversation as I felt talking with you. And I would like, before we say our goodbyes, even though I'll have everything linked in the show notes and I love that worksheet, I'm sure people will want to have access to that. If you can tell us where people can find you, so if they want to connect with you, they can keep in touch.
Absolutely. So they can reach me through my website, which is www.themindfulfamily.in. I'm based in India. You can also reach me on Facebook. I go by the name Jaspreet Chopra Lewis. You can find me there and reach out to me if you just want to have conversation also. I love to talk.
Thank you, Jaspreet. It was wonderful meeting you and talking with
Same
you.
here.
Thank you for sharing your experiences, your strategies, your framework so openly. I think a lot of parents will be helped through this conversation and through your generosity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Makela.